This is Teach Your Way with BenQ, where educators find ideas that work. Let's get started.
Hi, welcome to today's podcast. My name is Carly. I'm with BenQ. Beside me here, as always, is
Maddie.
Yep. Also, we're both with the Marcom team here at BenQ North America. And today we are going to be talking about your BenQ board tune-up. We're 6 weeks into the school year or about there, depending on where you live in the country. How are you trying to spice up your lessons now with the BenQ board? Joining us today is Lauren McMillian with BenQ. Want to introduce yourself?
So as Carly mentioned, my name is Lauren. I am one of the field application engineers and trainers for BenQ. So I do support all the way from the install process to teacher training to support through the life of the panel. And I have a background in education. So I started my career teaching. I taught 3rd grade and 6th grade. And then I was an instructional coach at the elementary school for a few years. And then I caught next door to the middle school and was a campus technology specialist there, where I actually got to use the BenQ boards as a customer. And then that's how I met BenQ. It was state.
She just fell in love with it the moment she had experience with it.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Wonderful. Well, so for everybody's knowledge, today we're going to be doing some different things with the board. If you're listening to this podcast in audio only, or if you're in your car, we would just suggest maybe pushing pause or listening and then coming back and reviewing this when you're with your BenQ board, because there's some things that you're going to want to try as Lauren is talking you through all of the steps of it today. And but yeah, let's jump right into it. Today, we're going to be talking about how to use your BenQ board to add energy, creativity, and engagement back into your classroom or to ramp it up for the next portion of the semester. So first and foremost, at this point in the school year, what trends and challenges do teachers often experience?
Well, we're about at that 6-9 week mark, depending on, where schools are located. And it's about that time that teachers are getting to the point where they've already established their classroom routines. They have spent time enforcing, these are the expectations. And there's so much of that step in the back to school world of they have to go through trainings and they have to teach students how to line up, or in high school, they have to teach them the expectations of turning in homework or checking in on these different things, that by the time you get to that end of the first quarter, the kids are getting comfortable. The teachers are, they've now established all those routines. So it's honestly the perfect time for them to go in and say, you know what, we're going to switch things up a little bit. And we're going to, now that we've got all the formalities of the back to school, under the belt, it's time to kind of look at what can we do? What can we change a little bit to make sure that the teachers are staying fresh, but also that the kids are, continually held to a high standard and are having fun while learning and engaging with all of that content.
That's great. So what we're going to do now for the next portion is we're going to go through some practical tips and strategies on how to use the board to freshen things up a little bit. We're going to break it into a couple of different sections, and I'm going to let Maddie kick us off with the first section.
All right. We're going to talk about interactive and engaging tools of the board and how they can spice up the classroom for both teachers and students. What I'd like to investigate or talk more about is how can interactive features of our whiteboard, which is the EasyWrite software, the split screen or the screen shares features, helping teachers getting student engage or participate, increasing that participation in classroom.
Sure. So the nice thing about the interactive flat panels is they themselves are the interactive tool, right? So walking up to the panel, there are so many tools at your fingertips. You can kind of see on my board here in the room, I have customized some of my apps in the order of what I use. I have, my ClassLink and my Google Classroom at the top of my screen. And now I have the things that I go to every day, because teachers do not have time to go and hunt these down or find things. They need things right at their fingertips. And so being able to fully customize my screen not only helps increase the productivity, but it also helps me use all those tools that the kids love too. I can organize them as well. So when I'm at my panel, I actually have 2 screens here. So when I swipe from one to the next, you can kind of see some of the resources that I'll use with students. I see a lot of teachers in the classroom that they'll actually use the BenQ board as its own station. So the teacher will be teaching a small group, but they'll have students at the board going through one of the interactive activities. And this is grade 1, grade 3, and grade 6 interactive activities that actually live inside of our app store. There is a BenQ app store, and it has a lot of those different grade level interactive activities to get the kids up to the boards themselves. And then, of course, not to mention in our EasyWrite app. So when I open our digital whiteboard, we have a plethora of tools here that allow for teachers to interact with the work as well as getting students up to the board. And so you mentioned that student engagement and student excitement. There are a lot of tools in the toolbox here that allow for that. But I do want to point out some of the ones that are used the most by our teachers are definitely our split screen option when you're within EasyWrite. So being able to quickly hop over to a Chrome browser, and now I can pull up my different applications. So I've got my interactive math website here. So I can still be on this side of my board, writing on my whiteboard. I can have a student come up and show me how to solve this problem. And I can have another student come up and show me, now do it with the manipulatives. And just be able to take it from what used to be, I probably would have just had a Google slide up with some of the examples and students were be doing it at their desk. Well, now they can do it at their desk and then they can come up to the board and they can extend that learning. And I don't have to be the one that's stuck at the board. You also mentioned about like how screen sharing can help with that too. So I actually have my iPad here and I'm able to open our InstaShare 2 app on my iPad, and I can open it on the board, and I can actually send this board to my device. And now I'm actually able to run the entire screen from my iPad. So what you're going to see here is I'm going to minimize the InstaShare here, and I'm going to I'm clicking on the EasyWrite app. And so you're seeing these things move because I'm opening them on my iPad. And so when I come over and, I'm going to go back to the home screen, I can easily open my my class link. I can open my browser. I can manage all of this directly from my iPad, which again, when you're at that 6 and 9 week mark in the classroom, teachers want to be walking around the room and ensuring that students are learning when they're supposed to, but also being facilitators of the learning. So the fact that I can open a new tab and I can run everything directly from my iPad really opens up the teacher to be able to multitask, move around the room, and now students can be at the board taking ownership of their learning.
That's wonderful. That's really great. Especially keeping an eye on whatever students are doing on their laptops and their devices. And they know for sure the teacher can't come and see what I'm doing. So that's movability is really the key to keep the class going and participating. So I like that. If you were to give any quick idea to spice up just a regular lesson, what would that be?
So my recommendation would be if you're teaching your lesson in EasyWrite. So a lot of times I'm teaching on the fly in EasyWrite, and I really encourage you to live in this toolbox. So one thing that I know when I taught 6th grade, my students loved a good, healthy classroom competition. Mm-hmm. And so when I've got I've got a regular lesson going on, maybe I pulled in my resource from, my activity that day. I've got a lot of tools here that really allow for me to get, just kind of spruce things up a little bit. One that I really like is the spinner. So one of the ways that I've used this in the past, and also I always encourage my teachers to do as well, is, when we're at the end of the lesson or when we get through a main concept, one of the key features of knowing if the students have learned it is if they can then go have a conversation about it. Yeah. So if they can talk about it, if they can draw about it, if they can communicate what they were just taught, then that's often a sign that they're getting it, right? And so utilizing the spinner to then create, because this is fully customizable, teachers can create they can add different items, they can make it as however they want, but being able to put things like, how are we going to think out loud today, right? So I can add a spinner here that has, think, pair, share, or 4 corners, or, jigsaw. And so to spruce things up, instead of always kind of reviewing that concept or content in the same way, I can now have a student come up and go spin and choose what activity are we about to do to go digest everything that we just learned. So I would say something as simple as that can really kind of bring some energy back into a lesson that has been taught, whether it's a million times or just one time. And then also being able to really dig into some of the key content support tools. So for math and science teachers, being able to access the things like the ruler and the measurement converter, even our Easy Math, which has a quick option for you can draw a shape and it's going to quickly recognize. So I'm drawing, a triangle here, and I can quickly turn that into print, and now I can send it to my whiteboard. So even just those kinds of resources that really kind of support the content that the teacher is teaching as well, and kind of getting like, I know if I had this when I taught third grade, we were doing shapes. My kids would have loved to have been able to come out to the board and draw a shape and let it insert it and put it in. So when it comes to re-energizing those lessons, it's not about redoing what has already been done. Teachers don't have time to go redo everything all the time, but it's about bringing in what you already have and then just enhancing it a little bit, whether it's with a tool like the spinner or your Easy Math tool as well.
Yeah, I love the fact that like how you related your like concept teaching, just putting it on the spot, making it spontaneous, and they don't know what's coming up because they kind of get used to that schedule, that reg. Okay, this is the format of my class. We're gonna do reading. We're gonna go this and this and this, and this kind of like changes the routine, and it gets them sharp and like upfront and like pay more attention and be engaging. So I love that tip. Great, thank you.
So the next section is going to be on student collaboration and engagement. So kind of talking about that. What tools and what ways can teachers use the board to foster an environment of collaboration in the classroom and get students more engaged?
Well, so while I'm already in EasyWrite on my board, I'll just start here. There are a lot of resources within EasyWrite that allow for quick collaboration. A fan favorite is our team post, which allows you to split the board up into 2 or 3 teams. So now my board is currently split into 3 sections. There are a couple different color options you can choose at the bottom of each section. And so now if I want my students to be able to come up to the board, they can each have their workspace, or maybe they worked on an activity together and one of those students is now the representative to come up here and show that word. They can now all write at the same time. So when I'm drawing at the same time, you've got 3 different things happening at once. And not only that, I can also create a question that I want to go on all 3 spots. So let's say I'm focused on multiplication. I can actually send that multiplication question. So now it's in each of the sections. So even if it's 3 different ways of solving the problem, or maybe a fun relay ways to get them up, but also if I have some really good examples here, one thing that I know is really important to teachers is documentation of really good artifacts of student evidence and student learning. And the nice thing about everything you do here is that teachers can now save it. And so there are 3 really great examples of this math problem. I can use our universal share icon and I can actually send that to my whiteboard. And it just took a picture of the student work and just dropped it in my whiteboard here. So now you can see all 3 work areas, and now I have this documented within my lesson, so I can refer back to it, or I can drop this in Schoology or Google Classroom so that my students can go back and say, oh man, my teammate had a really good idea earlier. And so being able to kind of have that space where students can come up and do it and they can reference it later. And then also at EasyWrite, another good collaboration piece is being able to utilize our cloud whiteboard feature. So the cloud whiteboard feature actually allows you to create a cloud version of the whiteboard. It's like an online classroom just through EasyWrite, and you can drop it into any LMS that teachers are using, and then students can see this on their device. So, a lot of times there's a typical classroom, you might have table groups, or you might have students in rows, right, where they might be sitting too far in the back and they can't see well enough. Well, now everything on this whiteboard is now on their device, and now they can see it. And when the teacher moves through the lesson, when the teacher makes, these live updates, like, writing how to translate or how to do something, every time I'm doing this, it's actually doing that on their computer as well. And then the teacher has control over if they can view it or they can edit. So now maybe I have my students, they're about to have some conversations about this learning that just took place, and then I'm going to choose one of them to edit from their computer. So again, I get to go around the room and I get to facilitate that discussion, that conversation, all through the whiteboard just being on their device. And then to top it off, one thing about a typical teaching environment when you have, the front of the classroom, you have the presentation. I've already gone through all my Google Slides or my Keynote presentation. When I have my students working on their independent practice or when they're working on their group work, the only thing they can see here is one screen at a time. But our EasyWrite lesson makes it super simple to send all of these pages directly to the students. So now they can collaborate together and they can scan the QR code with their iPad, with their Chromebook. They don't have to have an app or log into anything. And now when they're doing that work, they get to scroll through the entire lesson, even though I might only have one slide up on the board. And then one other really key engagement piece I love about having students take ownership of the learning and getting them to be more of those active participants is, again, using that InstaShare. So a little while ago, I showed you when I was using my iPad, I showed you that I was controlling the board from my iPad. Well, I can also easily share my iPad to the board. So when students are using their iPads and they're using their Chromebooks, it's with one tap of a button, they can start sharing to the BenQ board. And so now all that work that they just did on their device, so now you can see everything on my iPad, all that work that they just did, maybe they designed a presentation or a one-pager, they worked with their group and they made a project or a portfolio. Now they get to share from their device anywhere in the room and all eyes are on them and they get to then take the lead on that instruction and the teacher gets to be, take the back seat and watch them, lead.
That's great. Thank you. That was really helpful. And I'm glad everything as far as tech work here. So next question as we go to the next section, which is forward thinking. Maddie's gonna.
What are some of the small tweaks teachers can try today or tomorrow after listening to this podcast to make a good difference in their classroom?
Yeah. So one tip, and this isn't necessarily a tweak of what they're already doing, but a tip I always like to point out is, again, a big idea here is that teachers don't need to be tethered to the board and they don't need to be tethered to their device. They don't have to be in one spot. They get to be movable, right? But the other thing too is, honestly, one of the biggest tips I share is the fact that there is a spotlight on this board. And so in terms of like when we were talking about student engagement and kind of redirecting all of that, this is a tiny tip, but it's often a lot of people don't realize or they forget that you have that option all from the remote. And so just tapping the button at the top of the remote goes between the spotlight and the laser pointer, which also functions as an air mouse. And so I feel like when we're at this point in the year, when teachers are getting to a point where they want to multitask, they want to be super productive, and they've got all those routines in place, being able to manage everything just from a click from the remote is honestly a huge adjustment to just free them up from having to manage a device or be at something. And then another thing too, a second tweak I would like to share also is the ability to split your screen when you're within a Chrome browser, because this is kind of a game changer too. There's a lot of resources that teachers want to access all the time. And again, when you're looking at one thing at once, it's great. But when you need those multiple resources, I can easily come over here and tap on the three dots at the top of my browser. And now I can tap new window and it's going to split my screen. And so now I can actually control everything from one side of my board and I can put it on the other. So I'm just going to tap move to other window and I'm going to send this to this side. And now I can manage everything I'm doing because it might be that you want to learn a little bit more about how the floating tool works, which the floating tool is the little pencil over there. And if you don't already know, here's a trick. You can make like a peace sign and hold anywhere on the board and it's going to bring the floating tool to you. There we go. And so now it just brought the floating tool to me. So if you're not super familiar with the floating tool, maybe you want to have it up on this side. And now on this side, you can pop over to our BenQ Academy and scroll through. You can watch the videos about the floating tool. And so in terms of teaching, you now have multiple resources because it's very rare that you don't need one resource or another, right? We've got reference charts, we've got passages and materials and all of those things. And we want our students coming up and annotating. So now with your pen tool and the floating tool, I can now come over here and I can annotate everything on this side of my screen. So when I want to point something out, when I want to model something, or maybe I want my students to come up and demonstrate that they know how to annotate, or they know exactly what I'm talking about. They now have that option through the floating tool. So those would be a couple things if you're not already using the floating tool, and if you're not using the remote, and if you're not using split screen. Those are a few of my tweaks to just kind of enhance some of those access to the materials and the resources that teachers are using every day.
I absolutely love the remote feature that you shared, because we are always so focused on the big items or big tools that we forget that. And that is awesome. Like, let's say if a kid is showing something and the teacher really wants to point out, like, this is the key part or the component, or she can like use that and do that. I love it. I'm glad that you shared that with our audience today.
And one other thing too, now that I've kind of taken this annotation here, I can also utilize the floating tool. Another tweak that I would say is, I work with teachers all the time. So I go and I do teacher trainings. I support teachers in the classroom. And one thing I hear a lot is, how do I make my annotation stay when I'm using my floating tool? And when you're using the floating tool, you have a lot of options. But one thing that you can do here is use the camera icon and then select the picture icon. And it's actually going to give you an option to take a screenshot of something. And the nice thing is, there's another little tip and trick, is that you can use your fingers to kind of size where you want it. You can also adjust it. So now I can just manually adjust. And maybe I want to document this picture that I've got. I now have a couple options where I can send it straight to my EasyWrite, or I can even save it to my OneDrive or my Google Drive. And so I'm actually going to send it into EasyWrite. And now you can see it took my screenshot of my notes and it sent it right into EasyWrite. So that would be another quick tweak too, is instead of losing some of those annotations, when it's something essential, it's that concept that you want to go back and review, or you want to drop in your LMS for those students that are absent or to reference later. That screenshot tool is another great tweak that can kind of.
This is great. Like at a middle school level, when the teacher is teaching the same lesson like 5 times a day, and sometimes you lose the content because you get into different like conversations and stuff. Mm-hmm. And having that, that you will at least focus that in each class, and they'll be consistent everywhere. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, wonderful. Well, so to kind of wrap up this point, we're going to say like 6 weeks is the perfect time to start thinking about refreshing. What resources are out there for other teachers who maybe need to have access to be able to learn more about how to use the board, so they're not so overwhelmed by the board? Because I know that can be overwhelming when you don't live and breathe in it the way that we do. So where would you point them in that?
Yeah, so I would point them to, we have BenQ Academy on our website that we've got our YouTube channel that really just breaks everything into smaller pieces. So if you just want to learn, like, how do I use just the floating tool, not the whole board, you can quickly go to our YouTube or go to our BenQ Academy and search for the floating tool, and it'll walk you through all of the elements that you have access to. And then, of course,
so the other option is going to our BenQ Genie, which your IT director can give you access to if you're a teacher and don't have access to it immediately. It's again, another free platform that BenQ offers for access and support for those that are in the field utilizing the products. So, well, Lauren, thank you so much. We're really excited about the few tweaks that you share for the BenQ board and how it can help teachers transform their lessons to make them more predictable, take them from predictable to powerful, to really engage the students, which is what we're always about with the boards. The one big thing with the boards is that they're meant to help you teach where you are or teach your way. So if you are utilizing an app that isn't in our BenQ Play Store, you can absolutely access it with the RP04 series or the 04 series of boards that have the Google EDLA certification built in. And you can go get it from the Play Store with support of your IT team.
And I think since we've shared our favorite tips, we'd love to hear from you too. Yeah. If you all can share your favorite tip after listening to this podcast, we would love to hear from you too.
So in closing, thank you again, Lauren, for joining us, and Maddie for being my co-host as always. I'm Carly with BenQ. And so as you go into the next portion of the semester and things are starting to get a little tired, know that we're here to support you and here to help you on how to refresh things and keep them lively and fun and spicy, as we like to say, in the classroom. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow us on all of our social media platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn. If you have access to our private Facebook user group. Feel free to comment in there. Additionally, we're going to have another podcast here shortly that will be hearing from other users of the BenQ board and what they're doing with it to change things in their classroom. Until then, we look forward to talking to you next time. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us on Teach Your Way with BenQ. For more resources and teaching inspiration, visit us online at BenQBoard.com. Don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode.